Hello, welcome to another instructional video for CSCI 1300. In this video, we'll discuss random numbers. So what are random numbers? If we have a sequence of unrelated numbers, we can call them random numbers. For example, the sequence that we're looking at right here. Traditionally, there are many uses for random numbers. Primarily, we see random numbers being used in games involving rolling a die, coins, cards, etc. And websites that generate content at random also use random number generators. Another important application for random numbers is in the field of cybersecurity, where information is being encrypted and decrypted using random numbers with the help of ciphers, etc. In programming or in C++, we have a function that helps us generate numbers at random. That function is called rand. We have looked at functions already, and this is a built-in function that is defined for us in a library. And we call that by simply typing in rand and no parameters. So rand function does not take in any parameters here. So this function generates a random number between 1 and a maximum value that is defined within this function. And that value is stored in this variable called randmax. This value will be different based on the compiler you're using on your computer. On my computer, it's a pretty large number that starts with 21 dot dot dot. We'll see in just a short while what that randmax value looks like on my computer. And the next thing that I have in my program here is a simple for loop that is looping in 5 times and printing out a random number. So we have one call inside our loop to the random function, and we're printing out the number that's being returned by this rand function. So repeating, the rand function will generate a number at random between 1 and the rand max value. Let's go ahead and look at the result from our program here. So we compile and execute our program. We see the rand max value here, 2147483647. It's a pretty large number, and we see 5 numbers being printed here. These are the 5 numbers that were generated by our rand function. Well, these numbers are random, but they're pretty large. Typically, we use rand functions if you're working with games, and we have a small range that we work with. And we can actually change the range, or we can specify a range for the rand function. So we do that by using a modulo operator and specifying a number. So if we want to generate numbers between 1 and 100, so let's do the example on line 7. So we do modulo 100 and plus 1. So for easier readability, let's enclose this expression in parentheses. What's happening here is we are asking our rand function to generate a number between 1 and 100. So we use 1 to specify the start of the range, and the number following the modulo operator to specify the number until which we want our range to go until. So here it is 100. So if we go ahead and execute our program now, we'll see 5 numbers being generated between 1 and 100. So if we look at this, we have 5 different numbers here. We have 8, 50, 74, 59, 31. Let's look at a different range of numbers. We just looked at generating numbers between 1 and 100. For example, let's look at generating numbers between 50 and 100. We would need to change our 1 to be 50. So that number is specifying the start of our range, the start of the range we want our rand function to be looking at. And the second number that we would change, the number following the modulo operator, would now be 50. So what's happening here is it's going to add these two numbers. So it's going to be 50 plus another 50, that would give us 100. And so our new range for rand function would now be 50 to 100. Let's execute our program to check if we are getting random numbers between 50 and 100. So you see 57, 99, 73, 58, 80. So we use ranges to specify a range for our random function. And the number following the plus sign is the start of our range. The number following the modulo is the number to which we want to add to our range. Let's run this again. We compiled it, we executed it, and we get the exact same numbers. What happened here? Our random function is not actually generating random numbers. It's repeating the exact same sequence. So in C++ or in general programming, random number generators follow a fixed sequence. You get the exact same sequence every time you run a program using rand. So this happens because rand function, like all functions, has an algorithm, and the algorithm generates the exact same numbers every time. Wouldn't do when we want our application to generate truly random numbers. So the type of numbers that's being generated here, it's called pseudo-random because it's not truly random. And to generate truly random variables, or the closest that we can get to truly random values here, we make use of this function called srand. So we do this, or we use srand, because we want to set a seed for our random function. We want it to start at a different sequence every time so that it can generate a different sequence of numbers. And we can do that by specifying an argument as a seed for srand. If you set in a fixed number here, you would still get the exact same sequence. It will be a slightly different sequence. Let's compile and execute to look at our output here. We get different numbers here. So earlier it started at 57, we get 68 this time, 96, 69. So we're getting a different sequence of numbers, but when we run this again, we will get the exact same sequence. So we're getting 68, 96, 69, 89, and 77. So this seed needs to change every time you run your program. So one trick that a lot of programmers use is to use the time on your computer. We do that by sending in time of 0 or time of null. So it could also be time of null as an argument to our srand function. And when we use the time function here, we need to make sure we include the appropriate library. So that is time.h. When we do this and run our program again, so we are generating numbers between 50 and 100, right? And we have now seeded our random function to start at a different sequence. So let's compile and execute. We're getting different numbers now. Let's compile and execute one more time. Are we getting a different sequence? Yes, we are. So earlier we got 72, 54. Next time we're getting 78, 99. So we're getting a different sequence, and you can run this multiple times and you'll get a different sequence every time, provided you use your time function here so that the srand is being seeded to the time, the current time on your computer. One rule to follow when you're using srand function is that you can only use it once. And it is recommended you use your srand function call at the start of your main function, especially if you are calling rand multiple times in your main program, or you have different functions using rand. It is still recommended you only use srand one time at the start of your main. It is not a good idea to use srand inside your for loop here, because Our computers run loops really quickly, and when you use srand inside your for loop, it will be seeding to the exact same start. And what would happen is it would print the exact same number 5 times. Let's actually run that here and see what happens. So if we have not, if we are seeding our srand function inside our for loop, and if we print it out, we get the exact same number 5 times. So it is a very bad idea to seed your random function inside a loop. Even multiple times in your function is a bad idea. You should only do it once at the start of your main function. Let's talk a little bit about the extra credit problem for project 1 that includes scrambling words. So the naive way of looking at scrambling a string or scrambling words is to leave the first and last character of a word the same and then scrambling all of the characters inside the sentence. But a true anagram of a string is not scrambling individual word, but the entire string itself, except the first and the last character. So we have our first character as I, our last character as a round bracket here. And everything in between I have indicated as dashes to indicate that it's going to be scrambled. I don't know what the character would be after it's being scrambled by your function. So a smaller string, for example, here CSCI space 1300 should return a scrambled version of that string where a space could be anywhere here. You're not scrambling individual words, but rather all of the words in that string. And using random functions here to randomly swap characters in your string is a good idea.